Okay, in this video lecture, I'm going to cover 7.3 impacts on land. And here are some of the guiding questions. First off, what natural resources are obtained from Earth's geosphere? Why are natural resources on land so important to Earth's systems? And finally, how do human activities positively and negatively affect land resources? So, land is a resource, okay? Um, and just to go through the different types of resources that we have discussed so far, a natural resource is anything we use that occurs naturally in the environment. A renewable resource either always is available or is naturally replaced in a relatively short time. And so your book lists wind and sunlight as renewable resources. Water and trees can also be considered renewable resources as long as they are replaced as fast as they are used. And in some places, that's not always the case. Some places, they are, depleting their water table or groundwater at a faster rate than they are, than it is being replenished. Or trees, cutting down more trees than what is being grown. Non-renewable resources are resources that are not replaced within a relatively short time frame. So metals, minerals, coal, and oil would fit the category for non-renewable resource. And then even water and trees, depending on the rate at which you use them. So here are some renewable energy sources. And here are some non-renewable energy sources. Okay, so one way that land is a resource is because we use it to grow food. Okay, so we have agriculture. Land provides most of the food people eat, and there are many areas in the world that are not well suited for farming. So in order to create more farmland, we usually have to do a few things. You either drain what's there, you irrigate deserts, a piece of land that was not suitable to grow, and now you are adding water to it so that things can grow on it, or deforestation, which means that you are cutting down trees and basically slash and burn to create farmland or to expand on some urban development. Mining. So we do mine for metals and some plastic materials far below Earth's surface. And there's many different ways that you can mine, but strip mining just means that you remove the top layer and then you get the minerals or the ore that's underneath it. The bad thing about strip mining is that it's open and exposed to forces of erosion. So it can wash away soil as well as nutrients, and it can take thousands of years for that soil to be replaced. Here you can see some chemical runoff from a mining process entering the water supply. And then development. As our human population continues to grow, people need places to live. So more and more land is developed and it's built up with human structures, basically leaving no room for other living organisms of that original habitat. So some variations, lots of different variations that go into land development. It's not just us, but climate and what do we need the land for? And then how good is that soil? Can it be used to grow crops? Can it be used for other things? So lots of other factors, but how can the soil be useful to us and still be beneficial to the animals around us? So trying to find that nice balance. This is a picture up here called habitat. Actually, both of these are examples of habitat fragmentation. And habitat fragmentation just means that before this road was built, these two, well, now they're two forests, but before they were just one. And then we came through and built a road because, it was needed. So this piece of land was developed, but as a result, now we've divided these two, the habitat basically. Okay, we fragmented it. We put it into its own little sector, and it can be very dangerous for animals to cross roads. So this is an example of a land bridge to help limit the habitat fragmentation that occurs, because Otherwise, these two would most likely be isolated. This is a very extreme picture of habitat fragmentation. For whatever reason, they left that little square of a community of trees and other plants, but you can see that it's no longer in a continuation. So like I said, we use the land for a lot of things. Agriculture, okay? We can use it to mine and to live, okay? And some of the byproducts that come off of that. But there's so many more factors to consider when we talk about land as a resource. All right, so the importance of soil management. So, it's extremely successful for agriculture because if you mismanage your soil, don't restore nutrients or the minerals that the plants used to grow, then your soil becomes not great to grow later on. And so it's really important that we maintain our soil and keep it healthy. The soil absorbs, it stores, it filters water, and it's also a habitat for organisms. It's filled with bacteria and fungi and earthworms that help break down waste and return nutrients to the soil. Okay, so very important that we maintain our soil. Because if we don't, okay, we could lose organisms. Animals will move out of that area. If we continue to cut down trees and not replace them. If the area is hit with a drought, that's going to leach nutrients and soils from that. And it's going to cause other issues as well when the land goes bad. Why live there? Because the land doesn't help you grow crops. So that ties into the food insecurity and hunger. So the structure of the soil is something that we have discussed earlier this year, how it's made up of many layers. The first layer, the top layer, is filled with litter, dead leaves, and grass. And then below that we have a topsoil, which is a mixture of nutrients, water, air, rock fragments, and dead decaying organisms. And then below that is the subsoil, basically the same water and air as the topsoil, but more rock fragments and fewer plant and animal remains. Because then you eventually hit the bedrock, which is made up of Earth's crust and the bases of new soil, because that will start to, break down. And when rocks break down and get into smaller bits and pieces, then soil forms. So here is an example of the horizon, okay, showing the different layers in soil. The top layer would be your the decayed litter, the dead leaves and grass, or you can call it humus. And then we have our topsoil, horizon A. Here's our subsoil. But you can see that it gets rockier, and then eventually you hit bedrock. So erosion does happen to soil, and it can take hundreds of years to form for soil. So like once you lose it, and the only way you're getting it back is if it blows in from somewhere else or down the road when rock starts to erode. So there are a lot of natural forces that can cause soil loss, like wind and water and animals. So remember that erosion are forces that move particles of rock or soil. Human activities can also cause erosion. Mining, logging, construction, farming, they all increase erosion because we're exposing the soil to these forces up here. You remove plants. Plants help keep the soil in place. Their roots help hold the soil down. And when you remove that, then soil erosion can occur. And then with the soil erosion, nutrient depletion. So this happens when the soil doesn't have a lot of nitrogen or phosphorus into it. So you need decomposers. They break down dead things, and they will add these two elements as well as other nutrients to the soil. But if you don't rotate your crop, if you always plant corn on this one section of land and you don't alternate it with soybeans, you're going to deplete the nutrient levels in that soil. So farmers, to help with nutrient loss, they will add fertilizer to soil. But if it runs off, it could cause damage to nearby bodies of water. So this diagram is just showing that soil loss in an undisturbed ecosystem is not soil loss, sorry, nutrient loss in an undisturbed ecosystem can result in soil erosion, leaching of those nutrients, and other losses. And you notice that this arrow right here says recycling of plant nutrients and animal manures. Okay, so it's like at a healthy level. And this loss of soil erosion and leaching is very small. So this is a healthy ecosystem. But if you turn that piece of land into a crop production system, okay, notice that we're going to increase our soil because we're going to, soil erosion, or add in nutrients to the soil. But then when we harvest the crop, we're taking that nutrients away, and the recycling of plant nutrients and animal manures is small. Okay, so it gets supplemented by external nutrient inputs to help keep that soil healthy. Desertification can also occur, where you had soil in this one fertile area and all of a sudden a drought occurs, and not just a drought, but like maybe years of a drought. And that soil becomes a desert. So some causes of desertification: droughts, overgrazing with animals because they eat off the vegetation, so now the soil is exposed to erosion. Cutting down trees can also result in desertification, but basically you are losing vegetation, either because you lose water, okay, or you lose soil fertility, so now the plants don't grow healthy or as big or none at all, and then it increases in soil erosion. But once you start to lose vegetation, desertification can occur. Humans use land as a resource too, with landfills, and this is where solid waste, construction debris, agriculture, and industrial waste are buried in holes. They are designed to protect the surrounding areas from soil as well as water pollution. But once it's full, you cover it with this heavy clay to keep rainwater from entering the wastes. And the capped landfills can be reclaimed as areas for parks and sports areas, but not for housing or agricultural use. So here is just a simple diagram of how a landfill works. You can see that the barrier is clay, and it's because clay is very impermeable to a lot of things. And then you put your trash in, right? Notice it also has vents for decomposition gases to escape. But trash, earth layer, trash, earth layer, trash, earth layer, and so on and so forth. And then once you get to the top, it's sand, clay. So now you've capped it off. Sand and some topsoil. And now you can use this top area for a park or for sports field or whatever. So we call this reclamation, restoring soil that was lost to erosion, mining, and waste disposal to a more productive state. How can you make that piece of land more useful? Sometimes it involves trucking in soil from another area and dumping it and building a new structure. Sometimes it's just restoring farming areas, as well as wildlife habitats. So it got damaged by something, and now you are restoring it to a state that it was before, or increasing its productivity in some way. But yeah, it's also very expensive and difficult. So here's one example of land reclamation. A lot of cities on the coast are doing this because they don't have any space to expand. So they're going out into the ocean. So they're trucking in soil and dumping it into the ocean and building it up. And now you can see that they're being creative and artistic with the process. Wetlands, okay, is also very valuable to us. So wetland is an area in which water covers the soil for most or all of the year, and we find them all over the world except for Antarctica. But wetlands are extremely important because they are breeding nursery grounds for animals. They provide habitats and feeding sites, and our activities can impact wetlands. So like when we build roads or buildings, we want to make sure that we don't impede the flow of that wetland. because if we alter that flow, now we're going to change the ecosystem, and we could quite possibly destroy that habitat. So benefits from wetlands, it kind of acts like a sponge to collect water during excessive rainfall, or if you live near the coast, hurricanes. And then it also traps excessive sediments and pollutants before they reach the groundwater, and so they help filter water. So here are some more benefits of wetlands. Here's the filtering of sediments and pollutants and nutrients. It acts like a sponge, and it can return the water to the ground during dry periods. It's open space. It enhances property values because now you have this like nice little nature, outlook in your backyard. So you see a wide diversity of wildlife. Trees grow on land. Okay, another reason why land is a resource. They're extremely important. We use trees and plants for food, shelter, materials for building things. They release oxygen through photosynthesis. We need oxygen. They also take away carbon dioxide and other pollutants from the air. This is the stuff that we breathe out. And then the roots, they hold the soil together to help prevent erosion and flooding. So we need to protect our trees and make sure that we manage forested areas in a respectful and responsible way. So when you cut down a tree, hopefully they are replacing it, or they're reserving trees to sustain that forest. And when you do that, that ecosystem is going to remain healthy, and we can depend on that resource for years to come. So there are a few different ways to log trees: clear cutting versus selective cutting. So clear cutting means that you're going to cut down all the trees in the area at once. And this is a lot faster for logging. It's less expensive because all the equipment is there and you just kind of go on through. But it's also extremely damaging to the habitat because the habitat is just suddenly gone and that soil is going to be eroded. Selective cutting means that you're only going to cut down some trees in a forest and you leave behind a mix of tree sizes and species. This is going to take a lot longer and it is less damaging to the ecosystem. But the downside is it's very dangerous to loggers to kind of maneuver through and then also cutting down trees because, it could fall the other way. And just like getting that equipment in there and out can be more expensive. So here's clear cutting, where you just go all the way through and cut down all the trees a lot faster. Here's selective cutting, where you just cut some trees as you go through and leave others behind. There's lots of different ways. This is called shelter wood. My guess is this is kind of like habitat fragmentation. Cut down some trees, leave a patch of trees, cut down some trees, leave a patch of trees. And I bet you their hope is that they regrow trees here, and then they'll cut these trees down, regrow trees here, so then these would grow, and then cut those down, and then just repeat. So sustainable forestry. A forest can be managed to provide sustainable yield, basically the amount of renewable resource that can be harvested regularly without reducing its future supply. So planting one tree to replace each one that is cut down. So, you log small patches within a forest, so different sections are harvested each year. And that pretty much does it for impacts on land.